Do you remember the stories about the Babylonian army coming to attack Jerusalem? The story of today is about that time again. Do you see the soldiers coming? In the city Jerusalem lives a young man. His name is Daniel. God has given so many warnings to the people, but the people ignore God's warnings. That is why God allows the enemies to come. Daniel and all the other people are trapped in the city. The Lord allows the Babylonians to take the city. The soldiers destroy the whole city. They even plunder the temple of God. They take golden articles with them back to Babylon. The Babylonians also take away a lot of people, especially from the royal family. Among them is Daniel. After a long trip, they arrive in Babylon. There King Nebuchadnezzar orders his chief of staff to select from the prisoners the very best of the young men from royal and noble families. They have to be strong, healthy, good-looking and clever. Daniel is chosen. Also 3 of his friends. Daniel is a beautiful name. It means God is my judge. Also his friends have names that remember them about their God. Their names are Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. But now something happens that is very sad. The chief of staff gives them new names. That is because the king wants them to forget their own names, to forget their own God. That's why they get names that honor the Babylonian gods, the idols. Will Daniel forget his God? Will his friends do so? The plan of the king is to train these young men for 3 years. They need to learn the language and literature of Babylon. They will get nice food and wine from the king's own kitchen. But Daniel knows that these meals are not prepared as God has set out in his laws. He doesn't want to eat food that is forbidden by God. He also doesn't want to drink wine and become drunk. Do you see that Daniel and his friends don't forget God? Daniel asks the chief official for permission not to defile himself with the royal food and wine. Now I read something special in the Bible. God has caused the official to show favor and compassion to Daniel. But the chief is also scared. He says, I am afraid of the king. When you don't look as healthy as the other boys, what will happen to me? Daniel answers, Please test me and my friends for 10 days. Give us only vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then compare us with the other young men who eat the royal food. And treat your servants in accordance with what you see. Then the chief of staff agrees. So for 10 days Daniel and his friends are only eating vegetables and drinking water, while the others are eating the king's food and drinking wine. At the end of the 10 days, Daniel and his friends are healthier and better nourished than the rest. So from that day on, Daniel and his friends are allowed to continue on their diet. Do you see that God is blessing Daniel and his friends because they trust him and obey his laws? Let that encourage you as well to trust God and to obey him in everything he asks from you. God makes Daniel and his 4 friends very wise. He gives them a lot of knowledge. Daniel can understand visions and dreams. At the end of the 3 years of training, the chief of staff has to present all the young men to King Nebuchadnezzar. The king talks with all of them. He asks them difficult questions. And what do you think? The king finds Daniel and his friends 10 times better than all the magicians and wise men in his whole kingdom. So Daniel and his friends are chosen to enter the king's service.